This is the Tuesday. Thank you, Maria. This is the Tuesday, November 15th meeting of the Finance Committee. I'm calling the meeting to order. The meeting is being both audio and video recorded. And before we get started, let me read the public participation guidelines for remote meetings. So members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. As a preliminary matter, this is Denise Cronow, Chair of the Finance Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative and in the order in which I see you. And now I've got a problem because I can't get rid of the got it. Oh, here we go. There we go. I have a wheel of death as we have, right? And so I can't click on anything, but so therefore I couldn't see everybody, but now I can. Okay, Peter Schaefer.
Yeah, well, here.
Thank you.
I don't know,
Sylvie.
what are we saying? Yes?
Yes.
Here.
Here works as well.
It's been so
Chris,
long, I forgot.
Chris Klowacki,
Here.
Stephen Morey.
Here.
Jeremy Bloomer.
Here.
Thank you. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative, starting with Maria Basheva.
Here.
Libby Gibson.
Here.
And Brian Turbot.
In attendance.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, good afternoon. This open meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Finance Committee convening by video conference via the Zoom app is posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided. Members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. We're turning to the first agenda item, and before we do so, I will cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda, and then I will ask the members if they have any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Okay, good. So with that, I am going to, before I ask for an approval of the agenda, I'm going to make one change to the agenda, which is I will move item number 6, input from Finance Committee members for the short-term rental working group, until after general discussion about reviewing and making recommendations for the annual town meeting warrant articles. So then that way Chris and Stephen can step off because they have to recuse for that discussion. So that way you can just step out of the meeting entirely, Chris and Stephen, and you don't have to zoom in and zoom out. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So with that change, may I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank
Second.
you. And thank you. Roll call. So we start with Peter,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Denise, aye. Thank you. And before we get into, so the next item on the agenda is public comment. And before I open the floor to that, I want to welcome Jeremy to the Finance Committee. Stephen and I were able to meet him in person a couple of weeks ago, and now he's meeting the rest of you on Zoom, and he'll see you live fairly shortly when we start meeting in person. So Jeremy, welcome.
Why, thank you, Denise. I look forward to actually meeting people off of Zoom.
And see how tall everybody is, right? Instead of this big. So good. Thank you for your interest in serving and for being here. It's much appreciated. Okay. Is there any public comment on items that are not related to the topics that are on the agenda? Seeing no hands raised, I will close the public comment section. Okay. Meeting minutes from September 13th. Are there any changes to those minutes that anybody would like to put forward? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call. Peter,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Denise, I. Those have been approved. Thank you very much. Okay, so review of the upcoming annual town meeting timeline and finance committee calendar. So Maria will share screen and put that up. You've all seen this. This has been circulated. So thanks, Maria. So there's really nothing, it's our usual, if you will. Thursday, the 15th will be our first public hearing on citizen warrant articles. I called the town clerk's office today because yesterday was the deadline for citizen warrant articles to be submitted, and they have received 26. They're in the process of verifying them. And then after that, it'll go over to town administration for getting ready for review by us. And yeah, there's not much to say about the calendar, with the exception of, as you can see, Wednesday, December 7th is the joint meeting that we had to postpone from today. So that's just one new thing to mention on the calendar itself. And that will be during the select board meeting. And on Saturday, it actually starts at 8:30 in the morning. On the website, it said 5 o'clock, and I thought that was an interesting twist to start town meeting at 5 o'clock on a Saturday night. So clearly that was a typo. There we go. And now it's corrected. Any comments or questions about the schedule? We will be meeting in person for all these meetings, by the way, mostly in the trailer. The public hearings will on February 6th and December 15th will both be in the community room at 4 Fairgrounds. Chris.
Is there going to be a remote option, or are they going to be mandatory in person?
I believe that we will have to be hybrid. I think we have to be hybrid. Is that correct, Libby?
You don't have to be hybrid, but Maria, we'll have to find out if we're set up for that.
I will. And I just on another note, Denise, there were 4 dates. The trailer wasn't available. So if you agreed that we could do it fully remotely.
That's right.
One of the dates is January 17th. Maybe I'll make a note and update the schedule on the website tomorrow about that. And then the other date is Tuesday, February 21st. And the 2 meetings in March, that one of them we won't probably even need.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's right, Maria. I forgot. We
Might it-
agree that.
Might it be helpful on this schedule here, Maria or Denise, to just put the location, and it could be either hybrid or in whatever?
Yep. Maria, is that okay?
Yes, I'll update that and post the updated schedule tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, short of knowing everyone's travel plans from December 15th until May 2nd, I just assumed that we would be hybrid, so that way if people are away this winter, they can still participate. So we're not forced with not being able to get a quorum, which is always a problem, obviously. So any comments or observations from the committee in respect of that? I mean, in person's better. If people can be in person, it's significantly better, obviously. However, if someone's away, then I still would like them to be able to participate. It just might be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
Joanna?
Yeah, I guess,
Oh, sorry.
What about on the meeting with the select board on the 7th? Are we going to the select board meeting, or are we zooming in?
I think we have the option to do either one. Libby's nodding yes, we can do either one. You can physically be there, or you can just register as, we'll get participant links.
Okay.
Thank you. Stephen?
I just had a question about what Libby said, or maybe asked Maria. Is there a question about our ability to do hybrid meetings from the trailer? And can we get an address for that so we don't have to keep talking about meeting in a trailer? Or is that just what we call it?
That's its nickname, but it's 131
That's
Pleasant
a
Street.
nickname. Okay.
And it is set up for hybrid,
Oh,
not
it
live,
is set up.
not
Okay.
live though.
Not
It's,
live.
it's a little weird, but it's set up for hybrid.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions about the schedule? I mean, like all years, I will be inviting the citizens who submitted citizen warrant articles to attend on specific dates. Obviously, they can always attend at any date if they want to. And yeah, we'll do it like we've done it in prior years. So nothing really new this year. Other than we get to be back in person with everybody. Yay. Okay. If there's no more comments, then we'll move on from that. So Maria, if you would, there we go. Now I can see everybody again. Perfect. Hold on a second. There we go. All right. The next comments, the next agenda item was general discussion about reviewing and making recommendations for the annual town meeting warrant articles. I believe that there'll be a few articles this year that are repetitive to last year. So I think one of the things that we can discuss once we discuss these articles is really get an understanding what's different since last year's article, what's changed. And if not too much has changed, I think we have the ability to probably not have as lengthy of a discussion as we do when we see it originally. Again, it's up to the committee members how they want to approach this, but I'm just proposing that there's an ability to say, okay, we discussed it at length last year. The article is 90% the same this year. Get some input on it, of course, because it's the right thing to do. And at the same time, maybe not spend an excessive amount of time so we can get on to the other articles. So that's just something to keep in mind. Is that was the point I wanted to make on that. Is there any comments or feedback that committee members want to add to what I just said? Okay, seeing no hands raised, I will move on to, and then I will, okay, so before we jump off to our date of our next meeting will be December 7th for Chris and Stephen at the select board meeting. And then after that, it's December 15th at 4 o'clock for the first public hearing about the warrant. And with that, Chris and Stephen, thank you. Nice to see you.
Good night. Thank you.
So Chris and Stephen are recusing because of the topic that's coming up next, and I'm going to turn the baton over to Peter Schaefer. So it's input from the Finance Committee members for the short-term rental working group.
Okay. Those of you who don't know, which I hope there's no one here, we've been having meetings and discussion regarding short-term rentals. It's going slow, and there's pressure from the moderator and some members of the group to have a article ready for the town meeting. We don't have the same guidelines as everybody else because it's coming through the town rather than through an individual. My recommendation was, because as when we had discussed it on originally, we said this could take 1.5 years to 2 years to get done. Rushing this, and the reason that it's being rushed, in my opinion, is because Act Now has reneged on the original promise that they would support whatever the group decided, and they're going to present an article or more at the meeting at the town meeting. So as the representative of the Finance Committee, I'm interested in what people's opinions are, those of you who are familiar with what's going on, and so I can truly represent us. I mean, it is quite controversial and it is quite interesting to watch. Not so much fun to sit through 4-hour meetings, but we do what we have to do. So with that, Denise, how do you want to do this?
Yeah, so Peter, I think we can just call on each person and have them say. And one of the things that Peter and I chatted about, the idea is not that the finance committee has one opinion and one voice, because obviously we're all individuals. But when Peter is there as the finance committee representative, he can say, well, you know, the members of the finance committee have a range of opinions and here's some of the ideas that they shared. So that's really the idea for today, was not to get us all to consensus and, you know, speak out of the same hymn book. More so to be able to have Peter understand what each one of us think about it, and he has then an informed opinion, or he's informed about what we think in terms of representing that back at the working group. So with that, we'll just call on people, and Joanna, I think we'll start with you if you don't mind.
I don't. So I guess Peter, I just have a couple of questions. So can you clarify for us? You would like us to talk about whether or not we think that the short-term work, that your group should put forth an article in the condensed period, or you want us to comment about the situation with Act Now?
No, I don't think I need you to comment about either of those things.
Okay.
I think it's more just your opinion about short-term rentals at this point, you know, what you feel at this point. The other things are nothing that we're going to have any impact on specifically.
Okay. So I think that there should be some sort of controls put on short-term rentals. And I think that this group has spent a lot of time discussing that. And I did attend a couple of the meetings of the group that you're on and listened in, and you didn't find it particularly helpful, which I'm sure you won't be shocked by.
No.
So I appreciate you're doing that for us. I was hoping that the group would really start to focus on some of the meat of the issue and sort of unpack where the disagreement points lie, instead of there was a lot of territorialism, right? And sort of posturing. And I had hoped that we could get to the points where there are actual differences of opinion and try to build some consensus. And it seems to me that the control of this is centered around, in some ways, preventing lawsuits, right? And in other ways, looking at different zoning options, but I'm not sure what the right answer is. I just know that something needs to change. So I guess that's probably where I would leave it.
The preventing lawsuits piece is based just on the fact that Act Now has filed 3 lawsuits against people who happen to rent their houses on Nantucket. And you know, what hasn't been discussed much is if the courts rule in favor of Act Now, that would not only outlaw short-term rentals on Nantucket, but throughout the state of Massachusetts. So the financial
Unlikely.
Pardon?
That's unlikely.
Yes, unlikely, but it's they're very serious about it. In terms of so the lawsuit part, you know, and I asked the question whether somebody who borrowed money to build a house or buy a house that they could rent, and the rental was stipulated on the mortgage, whether they would have a case. And I'm told by town attorneys that they don't have a case, that they're allowed to change zoning rules anytime they want.
Okay.
And they're retroactive. So that's just an interesting aside, because I was under the impression that they would have a case. So and what was the other part that you brought up there? I'm sorry.
I think you're just commenting on how I'm feeling about this. I think the other thing that I was curious about is this whole situation with the fractional ownership, right? Like, how does how does that play into this?
That's a little bit more difficult, because fractional ownership is essentially, you know, a duplex is fractional ownership. So I think the fractional ownership people are going to be insulated, but I don't know for a fact. We really haven't spent a lot of time, because Picasso and the other guy who's up here, I don't know their name, it's relatively small on the island now, growing fast. And we really haven't discussed much about it, nor have the attorneys. So I will bring that up again so we can get further, you know, information on that.
And I think lastly, maybe, do you see this group being able to coalesce and be effective?
That's a hard question. As of today, I think it would be very difficult for us to have a conclusion in time for town meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Joanna. Jill?
Hi, Peter. Thank you so
Hi,
much
Jill.
for being on the work group, by the way. We're very, very grateful. And I know it's hard and you're gonna learn a lot on this group, I think.
That is true.
I think my only real questions that I hope to get answered before you all make recommendations is, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And more than that, you know, not to put too fine a point on it, but, you know, does their data support, you know, what is the data that supports displacement, I guess? How many short-term rentals have displaced year-rounders or prevented year-rounders from purchasing? Like, I think that's a really good data point, and that would greatly influence how I viewed the whole, everything that you do. Because I think that's what most people are concerned about. And so, but what's the actual information of sales and things like that? And then one other kind of, this is a smaller detail, but I thought interesting because we've talked about development on the island, is what is the ground cover of the island? And can you compare that to the increase in conservation land? So if our ground cover, I think it's at 1.8%, Peter. It's shockingly low.
Yeah.
But I think that conservation land has gone up over the last 10 years as well, right? And I think that would be interesting to me to see how those two things track, because I do think that affects driving up prices on properties as well, so that the properties marketed are just naturally going to someone who has more money. And so, you know, what's the impact of that on our year-round housing, or is there a way to look at it, you know, to help our year-round housing community? So those are the kind of just the basic things I was hoping would come at it, that information. I think what you all come up with to deal with that, you know, I trust the people on the committee and the debate going forward about that. But, you know, if people, I've been uncomfortable with some of the statements about what's happened on the island when I don't see any information about it behind. It's just assuming development is driving rentals. Wealthy people are just trying to get, you know, make more money off their home, and it's all commercial. I mean, who's in these houses? Is it all commercial? Or is the average homeowner who rents, are they using their house 12 weeks a year and renting for 4? Or maybe it's vice versa. I really don't know. But I think there's probably a way to know a little bit more of that now than you used to be able to, since they've been taxing it.
Well, yeah, you're entirely correct. And I think a lot of this information is to be forthcoming. I mean, it's so bad that Granicus, who's been doing a lot of our data, when they did their studies on how many rentals there were and whatever, they never bothered to check with the real estate agents, thinking that all of our rentals were done online, rather than realizing that, you know, probably more than half of them are done through the real estate agents on the island.
Gotcha.
So ignorance, you know, is bliss, I guess, for these guys, but it's giving us no information.
Right.
You know, also when the whole thing was formulated essentially by Act Now, they said, well, this was going to help affordable housing. You know, I'm still waiting to hear how it's going to affect affordable housing, because no one's come up with anything concrete for us to discuss. If that was part of the case, it would be a whole different discussion, I think. You know, in terms of what you've asked for, I think both of that is realistic. You know, we keep asking, or I keep asking, you know, what are we trying to do here? And it seems to me that for the most part, a lot of it is not in my backyard. You know, somebody who had a noisy neighbor next to them who's on the committee says, well, the noise problem is a problem. You know,
And I don't get that, because again, the data that they released from the planning office, and unless that data was wrong, I think it said there were 120 complaints and only 18 of them came from actual short-term rentals with
exactly.
renters in the house. So
Exactly.
again, that data
Locals-
point to me kind of made me think, well, maybe noise isn't really the problem.
Or locals are noisier than renters, you know, one or the other. But, there's a lot of bad information out there and a lot of ignorance, but hopefully a lot of that will get cleared up. But I just don't know, again, how much of this can get done as quickly as it needs to get done. These meetings, are onerous in terms of time. Our first one was I think 5 hours. We're having an 8-hour one, I think, coming up, but it's going to be in person, be a little easier. So it's one of those things, but I will follow up on those questions that you had. I think they're both good.
And the other thing that would be, if you're going to deed restrict some properties from being rentals, let's say, and say year-rounders can, I mean, how does that go with the ownership of the house? I think that came up once before, and
Yeah, that's a whole nother issue which needs to be discussed, is what happens, any regulation that's done, what happens if the house is transferred. It really wouldn't be fair if we have a limited number of rentals that it went with the house. So that becomes a different kind of problem, which again has to be addressed. Again, we can come up with so many of these issues that need to be addressed that it just shows us how this can't be, in my opinion, can't be done in time for town meeting in a responsible way. But I've brought it up 3 times, and 3 times I've been shot down. So I don't know.
right. And then the other issue is also, what are their costs to the town? We always say, oh, it's just one person, they're just going to file registration. Well, I know it's more complicated than that.
Costs to the town with regulation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, who's gonna go knock on doors to see if somebody's renting the house? Of course, houses aren't gonna go empty. We all know.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is the
Somebody's
new
gonna-
houses that a lot of people complain about, they're the ones that are operating under code because they couldn't have gotten their certificate of occupancy without it. So, it's really some of the older homes, and who does that affect?
I don't think anybody has ever yet mentioned code, or compliance. It's a good point, but hasn't come up yet. It's as strange as it might be.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for doing it.
I tried to renege, but Denise wouldn't take it back. So I'm there.
After the 5-hour meeting, you're like, I'm out.
Yes, exactly.
In for a
If
penny,
it
in
makes
for
you
a
feel any
pound.
better, Peter, I've been on a Capcom meeting weekly since July.
Oh,
Jeremy.
I had to hit the mute button. All right. I concur with a lot of what's been said, and here's my take on this. And I think given a lot of the problems people have addressed, in many ways, I think it's important to sort of set up an infrastructure process of how to approach this, because we don't know what the problem is. And in many conflicts that I've seen in other things, getting to commonality of language is terribly important. The problem is often neither party wants to get there because they want to fight for whatever reason, or they think they're going to win in that particular fight. And I think we have that situation at the moment. So that's one big issue that's kind of a big problem, is how do you define the problem that's trying to be solved here? And how do you bring everyone together? And I think that's what the moderator is trying to do. But I do worry, from everything I hear, that is not the goal of the parties. So that's number one. Number two is the data issue. If you define the problem, then what is the data that supports that? And if you can define it and you can get the data, that is, 90% of them getting to a solution. I think one of the worries I have is I heard many things, not today, but before, that getting the data, it's interesting that the town is going to charge for that because they have to recoup their costs and all of that. And I did hear at some meeting that people did begin to talk about the idea of building codes and getting a certificate of occupancy equivalency. So for instance, in my house here, it was built in 1800. Well, I'm not certain every single part of it is completely up to the code of 2022. I know I've had work done and I had to get COs when that work got done, but I wonder how many other people have that. And I don't think that's a problem for us, but It could be. So anyway, it's what is the problem? How do we define it? What is the data to support it? Because everything I hear about this, a lot of anecdote, a lot of myth, and I'm not sure that the data will support that. And then we should think about what is the role of the finance committee, even if we don't all 100% agree on particular purposes or parts of it. What is it we want to accomplish by coming up with an opinion, a diverse set of opinion, you know, different facts, whatever. So those would be my 3 comments. Problem definition, what's the data, how do we get it, and what's our role, or what do we think our role should be to be most effective?
I think in terms of our role, you know, I don't think we need to come up with anything. I think our role would be to offer our opinion, which would be through me. And, you know, this is a 7 out of 9 vote, and we'll see where it goes from there. But, you know, nobody's waiting for us to deliver a document or anything like that. It's more, it's more all over the board is really what it ends up being. And there's, you know, it's the what is the problem thing and the data thing are the 2 things that are still outstanding. They were outstanding a while back as well. And, you know, I had brought up the fact of possibly to make people happy, there's 2 issues that most people seem to agree on. One is the traffic on the island is horrible during the summer. And if we didn't have as much traffic, people probably wouldn't be as up in arms. So I said, why don't we look at putting some sort of restriction on how many cars come over? And I was told by town council that we can't do that. It's illegal because roads are part of the American road thing or whatever, and you can't restrict cars. Maybe the boat can restrict cars on the boat. Maybe there's another way to go about it, but not on the roads. So that was one thing. And then I brought up the idea, the other big thing seems to be the fire department. And I said, you know, we're building pools like it's going out of style. Each pool has 50,000 gallons minimum. And why don't we just make everybody who puts in a pool have to put in an attachment so that the fire department could hook up to it immediately and be able to use that water to pump on a fire. And that got nowhere too. So it doesn't look like, you know, it goes back to this, if I have noise next door, I'm not solving that problem. You know, so it seems to me that there, you know, these 2 things, by the way, were to present to this town meeting so that we'd have a little bit more time to come up with something in terms of the long-term rental, short-term rentals. And it got, no one even responded. I mean, replied, nothing. So I hear you, Jeremy.
Peter, you know, in any situation, we can coalesce dust to make a brick to solve a problem. And if you fractionate it, the dust will blow away in the wind. And what I constantly hear on all of this is, and maybe it's just because I'm new to the public forum, but people talk about, you know, 16 different topics and different anecdotes, and then the dog stole this, and everyone then gets distracted and gets away from sort of what is the root cause and a root issue that everyone's trying to address. And I think people sometimes are, you know, single issue people, and they do that kind of on purpose. But is there anything we could do, even if we only get a majority that agree on doing it, that could be effective in this fight? I guess that's my question is, yes, we can play whack-a-mole on every one of the 23 different issues that are going to come up on all of this. But how do we, maybe I'm almost asking an impossible question, but how do we come up with a consensus of a potential solution, in that the problem isn't defined and we don't have the data? So then what can the finance committee do to sort of alleviate all of, you know, everybody's concerns here?
Well, one of the things that I had asked was whether things could be grandparented, which is the new word I'm told, grandparented, that anything up to, you know, let's just say January 1st of 2023 was staying the way it is, and going forward, we had regulations. Well, I was told that is not in the cards either. So I'm saying that because a large amount of feedback that I got would seem that it would be difficult to pass anything like that. So it's, you know, everything is a challenge, but I hear you. And I see what I was thinking was that would be the starting point, that if we knew everything was grandfathered, we started 2023, then I think we'd have a clean slate and people would be more willing to go back and forth. But we're not there. Everybody wants to go back to day one. So I don't know.
Jill? Jill, go ahead.
This is just a comment and I'm throwing it out there so you all can correct me if my memory is wrong, which is often. But the reason that we're sitting here today and the reason the group exists is why? From what I remember, it's because Act Now decided that short-term rentals were a problem on Nantucket. They were displacing year-round residents. They were causing density and traffic and noise problems. And so that's how it started. And that's why we're here. And that really can't be ignored because I didn't hear anyone from the town say we needed to regulate them. I didn't hear select board say, let's tax them so we get more money. I didn't hear any of that from other people. So that's really why we're here. And I think that's why they're being so aggressive with the group. But if what they've told us isn't built on something that's verifiable, then, then I think, you have to, again, go back to what is our purpose here, based just on that data. So it sounds like you're doing that, Peter, and it sounds like that group is trying hard to get the data. I'm sure it's hard to get, but I just did want to remind people of why this started. I'm not saying that what they said wasn't entirely true. It just wasn't verifiable, in my opinion.
I think that, yeah. I agree with you.
Peter,
I'm
hang
sorry.
on a second. Why we're discussing it is because we are going to be seeing warrant articles in respect of it.
Yeah.
Right. So our role as finance committee is to make a recommendation on every single warrant article with the exception of the planning board's articles. Right. So and then we also offer an opinion on their recommendation. So for every warrant, so Jeffrey or Jeremy, to your point, why are we involved? We're involved not because necessarily this is a problem the finance committee should fix or address even, but because it is going to come across our desk again during the warrant season. So, we have to.
So maybe a question we should ask
So let me
ourselves
finish.
is.
Let me
Sorry.
finish. Yep. So with that, we have to, and because Peter is a representative on this work group, it's helpful for him to understand what the rest of the members think about the topic in general, rather than we're not here to solve it either today or anytime soon, but we're here to, learn what each other thinks. And then when we have to do the review of any potential warrant articles related to short-term rentals, then obviously we will look for all data sources and inputs as to being formed in terms of being able to offer our recommendations and our motions. So go ahead.
I understand. I was just wondering if, rather than just responding to the different warrant articles and having an opinion on each of them, as we see the nature of a problem, and maybe it is, density and traffic and some other things, as we, are we supposed to consider putting forward our own proposal to solve all of this? Or is that just so much out of purview and it just is so complex, it's not a good use of time?
So it's the select boards. The select board, and for the bigger problems, that would actually be within the select board's remit. As individual citizens, we are more than able to go to the select board and share our thoughts during public comments. But in terms of picking bigger topics that the finance committee could potentially weigh in on or come up with solutions, that is absolutely outside of our charter. So our charter is to do basically three things. We act as the county commissioner finance committee. We offer an opinion on every single warrant article, which is our motions. So that's our recommendation to the voters after we spend extensive time going through each article. And then the last is we actually have four. I also participate on the town's audit committee. And then last, if we find something that we believe is of financial significance to the town, we can write letters to the select board saying we would like the select board to address or the town administration to address XYZ. Libby, anything? Did I get that right? And yes, thank you. Or Brian, just. Just checking with the person who knows more. Libby's forgotten more about municipal government. Libby and Brian together have forgotten more about municipal government than I'll ever know in my lifetime. So Libby, Brian, anything to add to that? And then Joanna, I'll go to you.
I'd say that's more or less quite accurate.
Thank you. All right, Joanna.
I just wanted to comment, we have talked about short-term rentals outside of Act Now, right? It has come up with regard to affordable housing numerous times in our discussion because of basically the data, right? Because many times affordable housing has come before this committee and talked about displacement of people and how people can purchase homes. And we've discussed the lack of data for many proposals. And also, I think most recently, it's also come up a lot around, resource depletion, right? And the number of people who are on the island and the amount of resources that consumes. And so I think that it's hard to look at this in strictly one tunnel. I think you really have to consider the impact more broadly than one group who has an interest, right? I do think it rolls out into all of these other areas.
Thank you. Okay. Peter, from my perspective on the, I still think of them as seasonal rentals versus short-term rentals. That's a gift. That's a gift from the governor. So that terminology. I have, I think to find a sensible way to regulate that supports quality of life on Nantucket, right? So that's really some of the issues: the noise, the traffic, the changeovers every week, and people who live next door to a changeover getting disrupted, and. So I think there's something to do with that. I think there's a component of, to your point that you made at the very beginning, I bought my house knowing I could do this, and now I can't. Maybe I can't afford my house anymore, or I can't afford my lifestyle. I mean, a lot of long-term, many generational Nantucket people rent their houses in the summertime to help pay for all the things they need to, and rent it for 4 weeks, or according to federal tax law, 2 weeks. It's tax-free then, and then they have money to cover their taxes or whatever they're needing money for. So I also think that whatever comes up as a solution should make sense, that it isn't contradictory to tax law. It just wouldn't make sense. And then lastly, I think it's a topic that will stay with us for several iterations. And the challenge is always going to be, we're an island compared to, the communities that we get compared to. You can still drive somewhere where we really can't drive somewhere here. So the geographic isolation kind of amplifies some of the topics that we have here as compared to the mainland. And, we often get compared to Aspen or Jackson or et cetera. And I'm like, well, but they could still drive somewhere, right? So close, is it nice to live an hour away from where you work? No, it's not. But could they? Yes, they could, right? You can't live an hour away here. You can't drive an hour unless you want to just keep driving around and around. So yeah. So I think those are some of the things that, it always, do I have an answer? Yeah, I've thought about it in terms of almost like a medallion system, like they do for the taxis. We set a limit as a town and say only so many people, only so many seasonal rentals are allowed. The medallion goes with the owner in the house. If you sell the house, the medallion doesn't go with it. You have to be registered. You have to, people, if there's a problem, then they have someone to call. You actually have to, you can't just get a medallion and sit on it. You actually have to rent your house 2 out of 3 years. Otherwise somebody else gets it, those kinds of things. So, as and when, but it goes back to what all of you have said, which is what is actually the problem we're trying to solve. And some of the problems that are trying to be solved are not necessarily connected in a capital market, right? So affordable housing, prices of housing, short-term rentals, those things aren't economically connected at this point, because if we stopped seasonal rentals tomorrow, those houses would not become year-round rentals necessarily, right? So, because we just don't know. And I still wish we had an understanding, which I wish somebody had always studied, so we could do some elasticity analysis on if you cut back seasonal rentals by X, what does that do to the Nantucket economy? Right. And being able to understand that for me would help me make a better decision as to what I think is the right answer going forward. So those are my thoughts. Peter.
Denise, just one other thing is, and this actually came from Act Now, ironically, the difference in value between a rentable house and an non-rentable house is 25%. So essentially, if you have a selective rental pool, those houses are worth 25% more than the rest of the houses, and that becomes a real problem. So
is a non-rentable house a house that just isn't able to be rented, or is you wouldn't want to rent it? How do you
No,
define
that isn't-
non-rentable house?
it isn't able to be rented, not,
Okay.
you know, if we come up with a licensing thing, like,
Okay,
you know, like you were suggesting.
okay. Well, no, I just was trying to think of what would be a fair system that kind of works, but anyway,
Right.
Jeremy, did you raise your hand? I'm sorry.
I don't think so. Did I hit a
Okay.
button?
No, I out of the corner of my eye, I thought you were waving, so.
Oh,
Joanna was waving, there we go.
Waving. Well, I
The
just
whole-
have one more question.
the whole, oh,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, all of us, and not just all these other people on the different Act Now and other committees, we're all trying to define this problem and we don't have any data. We have a lot of myth.
Yeah.
That's the essence of the fight.
Peter, I just had one other question about something you said. What is the issue with the grandparenting? Why is that off the table?
Because no one agreed with me, you know, so we're the same, you know, they feel, and again, we don't have a rule, you don't have any sort of solid statement of where we want to go. So none of it really matters at this point, but, you know, asking that we could start from ground zero, which we would do with the grandparenting situation, to me, at least gives us a starting point.
Mhm.
And it doesn't
Right.
penalize anybody who
Right.
borrowed money to build a house.
Right.
So, you know, and it takes, you know, we have 2,400 rentals, that makes 2,400 either the number that we're gonna live with, or we're gonna raise it by X amount a year, whatever we're gonna decide to do.
Mhm.
But we're not gonna, to lower the number of rentals, which a lot of people seem to want, becomes a much bigger problem. Much bigger issue, let's put it that way, not a problem.
Thank you.
Hey, Peter, just one last, I'll give you an anecdote. I have a brother-in-law who, from time to time, has been a taxi driver and knows lots of the Uber guys on the island. And they know for a fact that every wedding, that many of the people attending the wedding parties are renting the affordable housing houses because they pick them up. And it's, so I don't know how our data is ever going to capture all that sort of stuff.
You mean like renting affordable?
So a
Uh-uh.
house that, for instance, the taxi driver knows is an affordable, you know, house. Well, they pick up and they drop off a couple that have come for a wedding for 3 days, spending, you know, quite a bit of money to rent that 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom house or apartment.
But that house is owned by those people, they can do what they want. It's not. I'm not talking about Habitat for Humanity, I'm talking about the other affordable housing stuff. I think,
Joe?
Denise, you were on Habitat for Humanity. I mean, what
No,
are they?
that's Joe. That's
That's
Joe.
Joe, that's right, Joe.
Some of
Oh,
the
so I-
properties are deed restricted and they're not allowed to
Yeah,
rent
that's what I have
per-
read. Yeah.
some, but I don't believe all. So
Anyway, just, sorry, go on.
Jill, you raised your
Oh,
hand?
I was just gonna say, I know some were deed restricted and I don't know about all of them, but
Right.
some of them for sure. So it's tricky when you get down to that level.
You wonder where
Okay.
those people
Details.
go. You know, you
Peter?
wonder where those people go if they rent their house.
Well, for 2 days, I go stay at your house, Peter. And,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, we charge a lot of money here.
I thought you'd pay me to stay with you, Peter. Gee.
Well, you know, you weren't supposed to tell.
Okay, before this goes anywhere worse, anything else to hand? I think, Peter, you have quite a lot of information from the committee members that are here. And we can do this again as and when you need to. So thank you for, asking me to get this organized, because I think it's quite helpful for you. And to echo what Jill and Joanna and everybody has said, honestly, thank you so much for being on this work group. It's really important that you're there, and it's not without its commitment. So it's like, for me, it's the you're the pig in a bacon and egg breakfast, where the chicken participates, but the pig is committed.
But everybody always likes the pig stuff better.
Exactly. So we'll just start calling you bacon. So there we go. All right. Anything else from anyone else? Otherwise, I'm going to move on to our next meeting is December 7th. Committee reports we have. Jill, do you want to give us Joanna and Jill, you're on committees. So if you want to give us a quick rundown on your two committees. Jill, you start.
We're still meeting. How about that?
Yes.
Still have meetings. We're not finished going through everything, but I think we'll start, we're getting to the end. So then we'll start, pulling the report together, but that's not started just yet. So, but we've gotten through
Okay.
almost everything. We have to go back to the airport, or the airport has to come back to Capcom and talk about their plans for building housing. And they also want to do a whole electrification of the airport potentially. And so that's a new plan as well. And after that, then we have some town administration things still, I think, and then we'll be able to write our report and submit all of our information.
And remind the airport when they come in that last year was a one of, that they circumvented the capital program committee and came to us at the 13th hour to get something approved. And we're not doing it twice. So they need to follow the capital program committee schedule, timing, procedures. We did it because it was urgent, and there was some, as we'd say in German, Sturm und Drang over scheduling, and it was a one of. So just in case they need reminding to.
Well, they did
this
come
year.
to Capcom last year, but I'm not sure they liked the response.
Well, I think they also were supposed to go to another meeting and missed it, so that's why they ended up in front of us. And yeah. So okay, good, thank you, Joanna.
The CRC is also underway. I think there's a couple of interesting things to note right off the bat, one of which is the hospital is not making a request this year.
Okay.
The
Oh,
state of
good.
Massachusetts has officially included it in their budget for the mental health transport. So we have succeeded in something here, everybody. This is really incredible. So I'm super
That's very
proud to
good.
report
Major.
that. Yes, that is major. So we did some good work.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Jeremy, just quickly, the contract review committee reviews the requests from social services organizations on the islands, because the island or the town last year funded $650,000 of support for these agencies. And the hospital has been asking us for funding because they were doing social service work, that they were the only hospital that does it. And we said, but you're a big hospital and you're partners. So it's been a lot of back and forth over the years. So that's why this is a very big deal. So just so for Jeremy's benefit.
Yeah, and
Anything else, Joanna?
And
Yes.
how much, just rough with justice, how much was what you were able not to pay for this year that they are paying elsewhere?
$150,000.
And that's for mental health transportation,
Yes.
and which means what exactly?
It means that the people who don't have insurance or another way to pay for it were unable to get transportation off island to go to any type of a residential treatment clinic program.
For
So this pays for
the people that have this problem, they have to be in a special ambulance. They
Yes.
can't just be in the back seat of a car, because
Right.
they're potentially violent or could harm themselves. So it's a specialty ambulance that has to take them to the facility that's going to take care of them.
Right.
And how many people a year does our community have who need to be transported that way?
Well, the first year that we heard this request, it was 12. And last year, I believe it was 50 something.
Yes.
50? So it
Yeah.
costs
Mhm.
$3,000 for each trip?
It's sometimes
expensive.
more.
This is
Sometimes
off
more.
island, Jeremy.
They have to
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
off island.
So we really have 50 people that are harm to others or harm to themselves in the mental health issue.
Yes. And to be honest, everyone here, well, myself, Denise, Jill, Stephen Maury, we've all taken a rotation on this committee, and it is eye-opening.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Good.
So the second thing I wanted to share was about the cannabis tax. So
Mhm.
apparently there's some state issue with the cannabis tax, and so right now we don't know if we're going to have money or how much money we will have to give away. Libby and Brian might want to clarify that, because we just got told that last week.
Okay, so it's not the tax, it is the community benefits.
Okay, yes.
So we have what's called host community agreements with the 2 dispensaries on the island, and we negotiated community benefit payments from them. And those are now not really exactly legal anymore. If we were to do an agreement today, the Cannabis Control Commission would most likely not approve a contract that had a community benefit payment in it unless it can be very much tied to a direct cost to the community of
Yes.
the impact of the dispensary. So Jericho and I have been going around and around with town council, and there was a webinar last week about this, sponsored by the Mass Municipal Association, about how to capture exactly what those costs are. And it is not very easy. Some of them are kind of obvious, like an inspection of the dispensary, or if they were going to a board for an application for something and there was staff time involved in assisting with processing the application. But besides that, it's a little murky. So we've been trying to find out from other towns, does anybody have a template for this? And so far, nobody has a template for it. And it's almost taking more time than it's worth to try to figure out what the cost is to us. Like in other communities, for example, Western Mass at the beginning, when the pot shops first were opening, you might remember there were lines and traffic and impacts on communities. We didn't really have any of that. So it's a little harder for us to pin down exactly what those costs are. But Brian and I, Brian, I don't know if you were able to, it's probably in my email, if you were able to find out the revenue from the payment, the community benefit payments versus the tax.
It might be in your email, Libby. I can try to look
Okay.
it up and see if I have it.
I have quite an email backup right now. But anyway, we've been talking to town council, trying to view this, but yes, it could have an impact on the substance abuse revolving.
So it's relevant because
Special
last
purpose
year-
fund.
Yeah, and it's relevant because last year we gave away, I think, right around $140,000.
It
And
was 175 last year, actually.
okay, 175.
Yeah,
So then
yeah.
it could be that we don't have any, right? Or a very low amount.
I think it's still to be determined as we kind of try to navigate, as the town manager said, through what the impacts of the change in the statute is.
Right.
I think that we've had, or I've had at least a preliminary discussion with town council, and we think the possibility might exist because we've given a grant that for that amount, that we could argue that that's a direct impact to the community in terms of a need for the community. But I don't know at this point whether I'm comfortable saying that that actually would pass muster. It's something we're still discussing and trying to figure out.
Right. And just for the benefit of this group, the money that the grants that supports have to do with addiction treatment. And they went to the SOAP program and to another program through Fairwinds, like a coaching program. So it is critical services for Islanders.
Thank you, Joanna. Good.
And I
Okay.
had a quick question, just if I, on that.
Okay.
Is our goal to raise a tax, or is our goal to equal some expense the town needs offset in this? Because I know there's a distinction between sort of a fee the town can charge, which this could be, versus a tax.
Are you speaking specifically about the cannabis?
Yes, just
Jeremy?
about pot. Yes, about cannabis.
Okay. So, Brian, I'm going to flip that over to you. But I mean, we
I
are
mean, well,
allowed
there's
to
already-
tax
there's-
cannabis
Well,
sales.
this is actually, there's already a local option tax on cannabis itself
Correct.
that was already created. This is the host community, this is a community impact fees from having them in the community, which is what the legislature changed the language on.
Got
And
it.
which, correct me if I'm wrong, Libby, but with the Cannabis Control Board, most likely would not allow payments on gross amounts of sales for community impacts without having justifiable documentation to substantiate what you're asking to be reimbursed, correct?
Right.
Correct.
How much
And-
is the total amount that we get, that the town gets from the cannabis operations?
Well, so the tax itself, which is separate from the community impact fee, is about 380,000 since its inception in 2020. Steadily growing over and through 22 and about 51,000 through the first half of the year, split between the general fund and the special purpose stabilization, which we would still have this money to be able to fund. The community impact fee that we had negotiated through the first 3 years, we received 189,000 from the one operation that was in existence at the time. Of that, the second operation, I don't believe actually was up and running and had actually made any payments as of yet. We also received as part of that agreement, $75,000 community host payment that I think would go away as part of this as well. So currently about 200.
So is it fair to say that we get some into the general fund, and
Mhm.
then we get some that historically has gone to the addiction treatment of about 175,000 a year? And that's what you're trying to figure out as the law has changed to.
We're trying to
backfill?
figure out the roughly 180 to 90, depending on the receipts that's going into the stabilization fund, because that's what would be lost.
Got it.
We get a local option tax from the state, which is separate from the community impact fee, the host community agreement.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand.
Jill, did you have a question?
No,
You
I'm-
agree?
I'm
Okay. You were
Sorry.
also just waving before. Okay, good.
I know, I need to wave bye-bye soon, so that's really what.
Okay, anything else? Any
Just-
other business? Go ahead, Peter.
Just, I am on another committee as well. We have a new committee, which is the combination of the R Island Home Committee and the new Senior Center Committee. We had a meeting last week. We're in the process of talking to other senior centers in terms of finding out what they did right and what they did wrong when they built the new facility. And we're going to be getting back to you as soon as we have more information.
Perfect, thank you. Good. All right. Do I have anything else? We have an other business agenda item, and if we have no other business, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, and roll call, Peter,
Aye.
Jill,
Hi.
Jeremy,
Yes?
Joanna.
Aye.
Thank you. Denise, I, as usual. Maria, thank you for the great organization. Brian, Libby, thank you. And Curtis and Kathy, thanks for being our audience today. Okay. Have a good evening,
Bye,
everyone.
all.
Thank you. Bye.